for this small.
Sorry, Laura.
That's all right. For this small group tonight, but hopefully it doesn't really matter what numbers we have, that, you know, we'll have a fruitful discussion, and obviously we're recording it so people can catch up later. So the aim of this meeting originally was to be a pros and cons meeting for the resolution. There's Alison. So the aim of the meeting was to be a pros and cons meeting, but we're more looking at the kind of the resolution and thinking about it. I have people who are going to be speaking about the resolution, including the proposer, but I don't have necessarily people against it. But we can talk about that and think about that resolution. So for those of you who hopefully all know, but if you don't know, the full wording of the resolution is: women and girls with ASD and ADHD, underidentified, underdiagnosed, misdiagnosed, and undersupported. Women and girls presenting with autistic spectrum disorder, ASD, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, are going underdiagnosed. The NFWI calls on the government and the funding bodies to fund research into the female presentation of ASD and ADHD, and for action to be taken to improve the diagnosis process for women and girls, to ensure that they are equipped to better manage these conditions and do not suffer in silence. The NFWI further calls on WI members to raise awareness within their WIs of the issues facing women and girls with ASD and ADHD. That is quite a mouthful as well for someone who is neurodiverse and struggles with reading those things out. So, but yeah, I'm going to hand over to Amanda and Alison, who are our two speakers. So Amanda, do you want to go first?
Well,
now
Alison is here. If Alison wants to go first, I will follow. This is Alison.
Well, it's very different because I've got sort of facts and figures and things, and Amanda's going to do a thing about sort of personal experience. So let me kick off. Yeah, so autism affects at least 1% of the population, although it's very likely this is underestimated, particularly in non-males. This is what it says in the parliamentary briefing. I don't know if you can read that, but it's a post note number 612. And it actually talks about non-males, which just devastates me every time I sort of look at it. So we are lumped with sort of, as a subgroup, there's males and then there's non-males, which includes sort of females, it includes people that are gender diverse, and it also they tend to sort of then wrap that up with sort of adults and people from ethnic minorities and blah, 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 blah. Everybody except heterosexual white men are different, apparently. And not considered. Right, before I get to the main part of the talk, can I just check that everybody knows what the autistic spectrum means? Because it's not a continuum from sort of mild to severe. When Lorna Wing and Judith Gould coined the term autistic spectrum, they were envisaging the light spectrum, a rainbow of different symptoms that together make up the clear light of a diagnosis of autism. And depending on which expert you follow, these might include above average technical or creative skills, character strengths such as honesty, loyalty, differences in sensory processing, including over and undersensitivity, difficulty knowing or understanding what other people think, devotion to routines, dislike of change. Well, Wing Gould wrote, autistic spectrum disorders include a wide range of conditions, having in common a triad of impairments of social interaction, community, and imagination. These were, if you will, the primary colours around which diagnosis is based. And the third one, the imagination, that actually throws up a lot of problems, especially in female diagnosis. Sensory difficulties weren't included as that major at the time, although studies have since been done. There's between 60 and 95% of autistic people have sensory difficulties. The imagination, you get people like Professor Tony Atwood in Australia, who believes that fantasy is the strong indicator of possible autism in young girls. But the male stereotype definition remains in place. It's constantly modified, very little changes. And women and girls are still struggling to get the diagnosis and support they need, and that goes for ASD and ADHD. ASD girls tend to learn to mask at an early age, and girls tend to be inattentive and withdrawn. However, much of the current guidance and assessment materials are based on the classic male stereotypes: Asperger's little professors for ASD and impulsive behaviour for ADHD boys. Statistics suggest that autistic men and boys are 3 times more likely to receive a diagnosis than women and girls. One seminal study found in higher functioning autism, men and boys were 15 times more likely to receive a diagnosis than women and girls. And ADHD statistics show a similar picture. Now, this matters because girls with ADHD are more likely to be excluded from school. In 2017, there were over 7,720 pupils permanently excluded. And the same year, 4,840 autistic pupils were given a fixed term exclusion, and 125 were permanently excluded from school. Eating disorders more common. 20 to 30% of adults with eating disorders have autism, and they reckon about 3 to 10% of children. Okay. Women with ASD or ADHD are overrepresented in the prison population. A meta-analysis of 42 studies indicated that 25%, a quarter of the prison population, meet the criteria for ADHD. A range of studies indicate a higher rate when compared to the general population, ranging from 3 to 27%, which is compared to an estimated in the general population of about 1%. Women with ASD or ADHD are frequently diagnosed with and medicated for mental health problems, such as anxiety, depression, personality disorders, without possible neurodivergence being assessed. I couldn't find much good research on this, so I analysed some statistics from 2019. 4,800,000 women were prescribed antidepressants in 2019, and 520 referred for suspected autism. So it's like a 1 point chance of getting a referral for suspected autism instead of antidepressants. And of course, even though you're referred, that doesn't mean you're going to get your diagnosis, because they knock back diagnosis on all sorts of grounds, including the one that, oh, you've got imagination, you can't possibly be autistic. When we were putting this together, when I was writing the resolution, there was one person in the working group who sort of said she was given a sheet of paper with sort of 5 pictures of a frog in a lily pond, and she had to say what happened in picture 6. And so she's told them what happened in picture 6, and they said, you can't be autistic, you've got imagination. And she's going, I'm a trained barrister. I know what a frog on a lily pond might do. I think one of the most important ones, and it's not talked about that much, is a shorter life expectancy. People with autistic spectrum order in the UK die on average 18 years before the general population. People with both ASD and an intellectual disability die even younger, on average 30 years earlier than those without the conditions. Now, suicide is common, but circulatory disease, stroke and heart attacks are the single biggest killer in one Swedish study. And put it simply, we're just not very good at looking after ourselves. We don't go out, we don't exercise, we eat the wrong food, blah, blah, blah. And suicide is sadly very common with ADHD females. It's actually more common in girls and women than it is in boys and men. 1 in 4 women with ADHD have attempted suicide. That's a Canadian study. And, oh no, there was a Canadian study found that women with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder are 8 times more likely to attempt suicide, while men with ADHD are 4.5 times more likely. Right. Now, it's also probably because a very high percentage of people with ADHD have rejection-sensitive dysphoria. They believe that nobody likes them. And I mean, that's very personal to me. I have never in my life believed that anybody loved me because I believe that I am basically unlovable, which for a married woman with 2 children is a terrible thing to have to sort of come out with, but it's there. And I think it's one of the reasons that people do sort of give up suicide. While experts agree that female presentation can be very difficult, can be very different to male presentation, most currently available diagnostic resources and statutory guidance concentrates on the typical male presentation. And I meant to print out, I didn't get time in the end. There's a big long document that's sort of like the social services guidance on ASD. And at one point they've got 22 bullet points of sort of characteristics. And the 21st bullet point says female presentation might be different. And that's it. Apart from that, it's just male, 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 all the way down. So there, really, one of the things we're asking for is, for goodness sake, make diagnostic materials and make materials for professionals that actually go into any depth about what female presentation looks like, because I haven't been able to find a single piece that does that. And there's an urgent need for research into female presentation before they can produce the materials, especially in the currently disputed areas such as the ability to fantasize and emotional empathy and communication strategies. The emotional empathy is quite interesting because Simon Baron-Cohen insists that autists do not have empathy. And you can do that if you look at the social construct of empathy, the dictionary definition. But there are 2 sorts of empathy. There's cognitive empathy and there is emotional empathy. Cognitive empathy, I will put my hands up. It takes me a long time to understand why somebody is saying what they're saying, what their thinking is, getting into their head. Emotional empathy, a lot of women with ASD are actually hyper empathic. They feel pain. I mean, I feel other people's pain when I'm talking to them. And I'm sure that that's ringing bells for sort of several of you. And it's just been written off. It's just one of these things. It's very difficult to prove because I don't feel empathy when I'm looking at a photograph. I don't feel empathy when I'm watching some sort of bad actor sort of acting out a little scene for me. I only feel it when it's sort of genuinely somebody else's feeling. So yes, they can't measure it, they can't bottle it, so it doesn't exist. We've got to ensure though that materials that are gender and age appropriate. And another thing, assessment. I don't know if anybody's gone for assessment, but it can take 2 years at the moment. And it really ought to be available within an acceptable time and available on request, not having to prove to your doctor. Especially, I've known people that have children with diagnoses of ASD or ADHD. And when they've asked to be tested, they've been told, no, sort of, you know, you don't want to do that. Adults don't want to do that. It's ridiculous. It really is. And then people sort of say, well, yeah, well, you won't get any support, which is where we get on to what support can be given. Now, obviously, one of the differences between ASD and ADHD is that ASD, there are no medications that can be offered in ADHD that are in a limited way medications that can be offered. But support beyond that, I mean, just even if it's as basic as career counselling, finding square holes for the square pegs, that would be absolutely tremendous. And somewhere where people can go and talk about their, have questions answered, but also sort of talk about how their diagnosis is affecting them. So, yeah, I mean, the WI, I mean, it's one of my safe havens, the WI. It's great. I've got this very structured, very time limited way of socialising. I'm not good at socialising, but being able to go to the WI and know that I'm going to walk out again 2 hours later, I mean, while everybody's going to be nice to me, even though since I outed myself as autistic, there is somebody that sort of buttons my coat for me when I'm leaving, which is very sweet, but I mean, really, yeah. Anyhow, but no, they are wonderful. They are warm and accepting, my WI, and I think it's absolutely great. And we need to make sure that people that want to protect their privacy can, but also people that want to be open. And we can also advocate nationally and locally indeed, for timely and appropriate diagnostic and support services. I would love to see at least 20% of the next tranche of the autism review project being ring-fenced for female things. At the moment, if you go and look on Autistica site, there's about 26, I think it is, projects listed, 2 of which are female specific, 1 of which is about autism in pregnancy and childbirth, and the other one of which is about eating disorders. Both very worthy, but they don't address these bigger issues of what the hell does female presentation look like. And also, I think screening. And screening can be very, very fast. There's lots of tests. You can do it yourself online. They take 5 or 10 minutes. But if, say, when a woman sort of enters into community mental health service, one of the things they receive is that 5 or 10 minute screening to sort of see, do they need to be investigated for autism or for ADHD? That would make a huge difference, because at the moment, you get these tick boxes to do about mood and things, and then sort of some bugger decides that you've got, I don't know, borderline personality disorder or something. I mean, no. And yeah, we do need a radical reduction in waiting times. I've said that. And I mean, that sort of screening thing, it means that sort of if you had that etiquette even in GP surgeries and things, because GPs, you can't expect them to be expert, but you can expect them to know that I can administer this test, and if it comes up with a score above sort of 35 or whatever, then they're going to get a referral. Easy. easy for everybody all round. So the NFI is sort of being called upon to produce appropriate educational materials, to encourage federations and individual WIs to familiarise themselves with the issues facing women with ASD and or ADHD, and ensure the WI offers a safe, inclusive environment for all women. I've got a diagnosis of autism. I've also got an appointment next week to get an official diagnosis of ADHD. I'm reasonably certain, having done all the online tests and sort of looked at the characteristics, that I've got ADHD, which is probably why I thought this meeting started at 7:30 and not 7 o'clock. I could go on half the night. I could tell you my personal story, but Amanda's going to tell you her personal story, and then we're going to have some questions. So, has anybody got any questions about that? What's been said so far? Right, hand back to Laura as chair.
Thank you. Jan, did you have a question? I saw you unmuted yourself.
I was just going to say I was going to just unspotlight Alison so that we could swap her over. So
yeah.
Thank you so much, Alison. I don't have any questions at the moment, but we'll hand over to Amanda, and I'm sure there will be questions.
Yeah, I'm probably going to go blank actually.
That's absolutely fine, of course.
I don't get on the screens. There we go.
That's okay. That's all right. And I was convinced that I'd said it was 7:30 as well to people. So I'm I think it's very easy for us all to do. I'm going to hand over to Amanda, and Amanda can talk, and then we can have some time for some questions. I'm going to say those words, Amanda, that you need to unmute.
That better? Okay. Do I see my picture? I don't know. It seems really weird.
So you're spotlighted, so it means that we see you as the main screen, and then we see other little people on the top. It's just because there's so many people, so we can focus on you. I don't know if you see.
All right. No, that's fine. So I would say I've always known I was different, pretty much. As a child, I was kind of described as an anxious child. My mum would go into school and kind of explain things. I was bullied a lot. I misunderstood a lot of things, but school actually said, it doesn't matter where Amanda goes, Amanda will always be the same. So it's more about kind of building her up and her resilience against the bullies. So pretty much that was me. I had one friend, and she was Catholic, I was Protestant, but I was adamant that she was my friend, and I didn't tend to go with social norms. I was okay academically, I would say, up until I went into junior school, and that's where everything kind of went really, really difficult. I struggled with the way of learning, so my anxiety got much worse. I'd become a school refuser, and it's not that I was pretending to be sick, I actually was sick. But it was anxiety of not wanting to go into school, not only for the social aspect, but also for the learning aspect. I'm not unintelligent. However, I was unable to learn how I was being taught. And even that was back in the 70s. So, so learning became very, very difficult. I then progressed into high school, and I made the girl that bullied me not my best friend, but I made sure that she was I knew where she was. I tended to kind of look at the social circle and mimic. but never ever was kind of involved or felt kind of part of the social network. Then I went on to work. Now, work was fantastic for me. I knew what I had to do. I did it. Then I come home. I met my first husband. Didn't love him. I didn't. Well, my idea of love was kind of that, you know, have that spark, and I never had that spark. But I said to my dad, you know, don't think I love him, and he said to me, love comes and it grows, Amanda. And I believed what my dad said, so I married that man, and I was waiting and waiting and waiting for me to kind of have this love, and it never kind of materialized. So I decided, I had a baby, and then that's where my difficulties, I would say, postnatal depression kind of kicked in. However, I challenged that. I don't think that was postnatal depression. That was this child came along and took me out of my comfort zone and my routine. The health visitor gave me kind of tips and advice, and told me to encourage him to look both ways, so he didn't get a flat head. So I would spend hours and hours and hours dangling toys at the side of my son's head for him to move his head. And he didn't, but they didn't tell me that I could actually physically move his head. So lots of these things kind of happened. I become more and more withdrawn. I wouldn't go out, was very anxious, but the doctors kept giving me more and more medication. And the more medication I was taking, the more unstable and suicidal I felt. I had obviously a difficult relationship. I had another son as well, and I had a difficult relationship with their dad. And I felt as though all my confidence that I had previously had gone. So I decided that it was best to leave him. So I did. Moving on from that, still lots of anxiety. Even though I managed to get a job, I moved out with the 2 small children. And then I met my now husband, but that was quite quick after. I did find what I thought were, well, it is love. I'm still with him now, and I feel, you know, that connection. So I did feel as though I found love, but it was very quick and impulsive, I would say. I hadn't known him very long, and before long I was pregnant with my third. I've got 2 boys and a girl, and I was sterilised after that because I could not cope with, I couldn't cope with the 2 children. So having the third, I was frightened that, and you know, I wouldn't be able to cope with the third, and I was feared that social services would, you know, take these children off me. I don't know whether anyone is aware of the term executive functioning. So it's the ability to do things in an order. I was told, oh, you'll be fine when you get in a routine. I'm 51 and I'm still not in a routine. I try my hardest to kind of get in a routine. But yeah, routines, even though I benefit from them, are hard to maintain. So I was constantly searching for why I was feeling what how I was feeling. And this was a constant. This hasn't been something that just came on. The depression, or what they prescribed as depression, was me ruminating about the past, and me trying to figure out why these kind of things happened, why would people pull my hair because I was friends with a girl just because she was Catholic. So kind of ruminating these things in my head. Anyway, luckily enough, internet came along. I did lots of kind of research as to why I was binge eating, why I seemed to be addicted to sugar, why there was lots of reasons why. Anyway, I came to the conclusion that I was ADHD. Totally convinced. And this was way back, I would say, 10 years ago. And I was fighting and fighting and fighting for my GP to take me seriously. This was 10 years ago. And it took me 4 years of trying to persuade him to do the referral. I had to gather all the information as to where the adult service was, which Dr. Johnson, and he eventually did do. I'd been on lots of medication, and all they did was make me feel worse. But I was convinced. A lot of my research came from America. I feel as though we're 10 years behind America. America's very advanced with ADHD. So I had all this information and I presented it to my GP. Eventually, he did take me seriously. It then took 18 months for me to get to the top of the waiting list. And Dr. Johnson spent an hour with me. And I told him about my childhood, about growing up, and he said, "You sound more autistic." And I didn't believe him. And I dismissed him, and I thought, he hasn't got a clue what he's on about. No, no, no. And I felt rejected and annoyed and angry. However, I went away, and by this time I was attending a support group that a gentleman had set up, and it was called Aspies for Warrington. Mike Hewitt set it up. He was 82, I think, when he set it up, because he self-diagnosed himself as Asperger's. And we went along because this was the only thing in our area, live in Warrington, that kind of recognised neurodiversity, even though we weren't happy with the name. However, he had a different slant on things. I don't know whether it was age related or his kind of, I don't know. Anyway, we went along. We became really, really good friends. And we went to the group, and I was looking more and more into autism, because it never in society shown up as me. I didn't identify as being autistic. You know, I couldn't count cards. I wouldn't be able to go to a casino, win money. If I dropped a load of matchsticks, I wouldn't be able to count how many there were. I definitely wasn't Rain Man. And how it's portrayed on telly, I think autism is kind of lumped together with learning disabilities. So I had a high IQ. So I was completely kind of baffled as to me being autistic. So eventually, I think it was a year or so of me kind of battling with my own thoughts, and I decided that I would go for the assessment just to get it ruled out, really, more than anything, to prove him wrong. So I was quite lucky from being asked then to have an assessment. It took me 10 months from the referral to my actual diagnosis. There was 4 sessions, quite in-depth, kind of lengthy appointments. My mum went along. My mum's definitely autistic, although she doesn't know it. As a child, I would count milk bottles, so lots of counting, lots of kind of matter-of-fact things. And yeah, so my diagnosis though is an ASD, and in our area we aren't diagnosed with a disorder. My diagnosis is autism spectrum condition, which I prefer because I don't see myself as a disorder. It's how my brain is wired. I find the disorder is society not making accommodations for my needs. That part is the disorder. So prior to that though, I mean, I've been struggling in work, paperwork wise, and I think prior to going for the autism diagnosis, I was still convinced as well that I am ADHD, and I wanted to take a second shot at that. And I requested in 2017 a re-referral, and I was waiting and waiting, and bearing in mind the ADHD service disbanded and then it reformed, and it reformed early last year. And I was told that I was still on that list. They contacted me to see if I still wanted to kind of go ahead with the assessment. And I said, yeah, I've been waiting this long, definitely. Only to be told it was only a couple of months back, and they rung me up and said, you've been assessed once. If you didn't have it then, you haven't got it now. I was absolutely devastated. Bearing in mind, I'm at work on my second action plan for not being able to keep up with my paperwork. And knowing that the chance, because Alison's right, there is no medication for being autistic, but there is medication for ADHD to help and support with that executive functioning and working memory. And that is what I was hoping that I could have access to, but I could only have it if I went through that official diagnosis. I challenged, and they said, we will think about it and we'll let you know. Anyway, I didn't hear anything for ages, and I was off work and I was behind and I was stressing, and I rung them every single day, leaving a voicemail asking to see where I was on the kind of list. Anyway, they then sent me an email of discharge. No, they didn't send me an email. They sent me a letter of discharge. And that letter of discharge ended up in me having a full-on meltdown in work. When I was stimming a lot, I was rocking back and two. Anyway, I think I freaked a lot of my kind of work colleagues out, to the point where they spoke to my manager. I was pulled to one side by my manager and told that should never happen again and was inappropriate. I am coming up against barriers of prejudice, discrimination, yeah, that I cause distress for other people. However, I don't think anyone realised the 10-year struggle and fight to get something that you feel as though would be able to help me in today's society to keep up with work in a job that I love. Yeah, and I was told I was inappropriate. bit of backstory on my job. I'm a family support worker. And I do that because I know how difficult it is to parent when you're neurodiverse. People expect that it all comes natural, and it doesn't. And the executive functioning is the hardest part of that, of knowing what to do next, and keeping in an order, and stop being overloaded and overwhelmed. We love our kids. However, the simple jobs like unloading a dishwasher and loading a dishwasher and just general housework is majorly difficult. However, I can set up a WI, and I did, and that was easy. I set up Wigs and Wellies and run a camp for 180 women. That's dead easy. The small things in life are the hardest. And I was also on an action plan for talking about neurodiversity. I was threatened as well, if I carried on, that it would take me to disciplinary. And I mentioned to a lady that had just been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and on huge medication, high medication that was kind of rendering her unable to function. Yeah, and I was kind of told that I can't talk like that. So I had a complaint from a school, said I was very neurodiverse heavy. I was supporting, it was a young boy actually, but he presented as, I think he felt he was bisexual, so that I don't know whether it was a male or female kind of presentation of autism. However, it wasn't spotted by me, it was spotted by an educational psychologist. And he was actually hitting his mum. And I tweet things because I know how to change things in a neurodiverse way, or have them understand in a different way. And I managed for them to communicate better, and that he has now stopped hitting his mum and they have a really good relationship. However, the school complained that I was neurodiverse heavy, but I'd highlighted in a meeting that he was actually being bullied, and that there was a member of staff that had witnessed it and it hadn't been reported. And I think that's why then they kind of came for me. Anyway, I am now off with stress. I handed my notice in. I am coming out of that toxic environment. There are so many barriers being an autistic woman. I worked also with a lot of mums that had attempted suicide, and after working with them and their children having the diagnosis of ADHD, I'd pointed them in the direction of adult assessment, and they've now got their diagnosis and they're currently taking medication. However, society deems it that we are poor mothers, we're bad mothers, but we're not. We're totally not. We just struggle with those kind of small tasks, unfortunately, that have a huge impact because of the amount of self-loathing that we put ourselves under for the inability to do it. I emailed the ADHD service and asked them for a detailed explanation as to why I was being rejected, and I was given 7 days for them to kind of take it into consideration and respond. And the doctor, his name's Jonathan actually, he actually rang me and he says, I've lost sleep about you. And I said, good, I'm glad. I says, because I've lost years and years of sleep with this brain. I said, so I'm glad you lost sleep about me. He said, I had to take you to supervision. I said, I'm glad you took me to supervision. However, I'm fighting for all those women that are getting dismissed because we don't present how. I think the first time round, I was rejected because I wasn't taking illicit drugs. I wasn't speeding. I hadn't got speeding fines. I was holding down a job. That was hard to hold down a job, but I'm definitely better. I know I function better when I'm working. Yeah, and all the reasons why I was not back, and I was trying to explain to him, just because of all these things doesn't mean that I don't struggle with my concentration, my working memory, and my executive functioning. Anyway, I got my official diagnosis on the 6th of April in Malta while I was on holiday. And I'm just waiting on trialing new medication so I can get off the antidepressants that are causing me, yeah, I would say mental damage. I had a burnout, autistic burnout last year, and I took on the new job and I tried my hardest to keep up because it'd taken me 4 years to get into that role. I didn't understand the application form. Eventually I got the application form sorted and I managed to get through to interview. And then it took me 5 attempts of understanding the interview and I got a temporary role. But six months into that, and I'd asked as well, they knew I was autistic, they knew I was dyslexic. And I don't know whether you can see, I've got pink tinted glasses, that's Erlen syndrome. So it's not my eyes, it's how my brain perceives light. And the pink tint lowers my anxiety. And I asked for help and support and they said there wasn't any. However, I contacted Access to Work and there is lots of support out there. However, employees don't know about it. Anyway, so I contacted them. That was all put into place. I failed at the last interview, and after me failing, it was because I'd asked for the questions, but instead of the questions, they gave me the score sheet. They also didn't tell me that the first question was timed, and it stopped halfway through, and told that, you know, you've only got so much time, and it totally threw me. Anyway, I didn't manage to get that permanent role. Other people did, who weren't neurodiverse, that hadn't got the background or the experience that I had, because I've been doing the job. And from that, I was put on an action plan, another action plan. And with all the pressure from the action plan, I've started developing a lot of stress. So just the thought of work now has me gagging. So I've managed to get another job. I'm going in the care sector instead, so I'm giving practical support. And I know that the company that I work for, the lady that set it up, she came to our group, which is now called WANS. We took away ASPI for Warrington, and we are now called WANS, which is Warrington Autism Neurodiverse Support. And when me and my friend, we kind of, Mike Hewitt sadly passed away, and we kind of took over. And when she got her official diagnosis, in the section after, we are the only support post-diagnosis. And they actually said to her, she says, "Oh, have you heard of WANS?" And she went, "Oh, is there a lady called Anne?" And they went, "Yeah." And she just says, "Yeah, that's me." So really, other than us supporting others, there isn't anything. nothing professional. However, the diagnostic system, the diagnostic service has contacted us to give them advice for putting in a service post-diagnostic, because they recognise there is nothing. However, we do help and support, and the feedback we get from the people that come to us is that they've never been anywhere that they've been able to feel as though they belong, and we help and support them. And one gentleman came and he was highly medicated. He managed to stop taking all this medication and allowed himself to be himself, which was amazing. But sadly, he died quite recently. But his husband asked me to go and see him, and I didn't realise how close to passing away he was, and I actually saw him die. But it's nice that I meant so much to him, he meant so much to me, in a world where no one understood him. And he understood me too. And in 2018, I tried to do a resolution and I got overwhelmed. I'm not as, I don't know, academically kind of qualified like Alison, and I can't thank Alison enough for this resolution. I can see firsthand my difficulties. The doctor's given me higher medication that takes me into suicidal idealism, and I had to say 3 times that I needed to stop taking the medication, and they kept encouraging me to carry on. And I said, if I carry on, I'm not going to be here. So yeah, GPs do need to be aware that the medication that they think is helping is making matters much, much worse. And now I'm waiting on the right medication, and Jonathan, the doctor on the ADHD service, has asked me to give them my story of the kind of the fight, I would say, for diagnosis. And they said the good and the bad, and I said, well, it's got a lot of ugly in there too, but they're quite happy for me to give it as raw as it is. And I'm grateful for them eventually, kind of, but I do think it was down to me putting them on a spot and wanting, you know, you tell me why I don't hit your criteria. Why would I be fighting for such a long time for the right diagnosis? Only recently as well, I've rung the doctor, and what she wanted to put on my sick note was depression and anxiety, and I went, no, I'm off with stress. This isn't depression. I'm not depressed. I think a lot of women and girls are dismissed as being anxious, nervous, and the reality is our nervous systems is heightened, and when we're forced into these environments that causes us distress, yeah, we're offered medication and not kind of given consideration that actually, if we lowered the lights, if we lowered the sound, if we allowed breaks and just little adaptations, that we would flourish. And from this and understanding myself better, I've been able to keep plants alive, believe it or not, because I've realised they don't all flourish in the right environment, you know, the same environment. So now I feel as though I'm going off track. I'd like to bring it back and give it back to Laura and see if you've got any kind of questions.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Throughout that, I kept wanting to scream when you were talking about work, about the Equality Act and access to work, because it really, really frustrates me how people think, yeah. Anyway, I could go off on a tangent as well and carry on talking. So does anyone have any questions for either Amanda or Alison? Anything you would like to say? Any points?
I was just going to ask, it's difficult enough, obviously, to get a diagnosis, but what happens after that? Is there any support structure or any a bit of a postcode lottery, or just nothing at all? I mean,
our group ones is our support. That's it. I will get medication, but emotional support there is zero.
I mean, there's a huge amount and a growing amount of informal communities. There's lots and lots of groups on Facebook. I met Amanda and all the other people that helped with the motion through NFWI. There are the National Autistic Society facilitates various groups. I don't go to my local one because it's full of middle-aged men who sort of drink a lot of real ale and tell sort of smutty jokes. Not my thing. Can I? Yeah. Sorry.
really nothing. And is that the same all around the country as well?
Yeah, even the mental health service are unaware of the connections between autism and the mental health. So a lot of them are kind of heavily into borderline personality disorder. Bipolar is a mimic of ADHD. The borderline personality, I would say, is more the autistic. But yeah, even the mental health workers, and I work alongside them, and I try and educate, but yeah, then I get dumbed down, and it's as if they'd rather have a borderline personality disorder than autism. It's society's stigma of what they perceive it is, and if you look at undateables or that's the perception. However, do I look autistic? Do you know what I mean? However, I take things literal to the point where my son's got a flat head because I followed what they said, encouraged to look both ways. Whereas when I'm working with a family, I am so I can't even say the word, specific as to what I mean. I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. Other people just assume that everyone should know, and we don't. We need it spelling out for us. And once we understand, and that's the key. I work with a young girl, and she's struggling from trauma, and I helped her with the breathing exercises, but I told her why we breathe and why we bring in the oxygen, and it brings it to the brain and it lowers the heart rate. And so she does it now, whereas before she would just totally dismiss it, and things are changing now.
Yeah. Can I just say something about the mental health division? I went to, this is why I got my diagnosis. I went to CAMS, the Child and Adult Mental Health Service locally, because of a historic, very serious sexual assault that I'd sustained, and I wanted to come to terms with it. And I don't know why, but they decided that I had borderline personality disorder, i.e. that I was lying about the whole thing, even though, there's the court records, they police caught the guy, he was sentenced, blah, 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 blah. But for some reason, they didn't believe me. So they started treating me for borderline personality disorder. And when I found that out, I was furious, because one of my autistic traits is ridiculous honesty. I mean, I'm too honest sometimes. You know, somebody says, "Does my bum look big enough?" I'll go, "Well, yes, it does." Yeah. It's just sort of like. So anyhow, I thought. I mean, it had already been suggested to me by various people that I was autistic, but I thought, right, that's it. I'm getting the diagnosis. And I had to pay for it. There was no way I was going to get it on the National Health. I was very, very lucky, actually. I got diagnosed by Julius Gould, who worked with Lorna Wing on defining the autistic spectrum in the first place. Anyhow, so, and then I went back to CAMHS and said, look, I'm autistic. For one thing, move me out of this room. I keep telling you that the lights and the noise are just doing my head in. And they said, well, we can't work with you anymore. And I said, why not? They said, well, because we don't have anybody that works with autism. We've got nobody here that understands it. Just bugger off, basically. Sorry about the language, but I mean, I was furious. And then one of the good things, I suddenly realised that having this diagnosis, because a lot of my major problems come from people, noises, sounds, all getting to me, and the not being believed gets to me. And that has actually resulted once. I was in a mixed cardiac ward, and they'd just done a very painful procedure on me. And they tipped me over into the most amazing meltdown, and I was running down this middle of this hospital ward, flapping beyond speech. I couldn't speak at all. I was mewing, stark naked, because I couldn't bear having any clothes on. Nobody looked at me and thought, possibly this woman is autistic. It just sort of like, you know, it just sort of like, and I suddenly thought, well, if I don't get the diagnosis and I have to end up in care, if I have a stroke or something and I end up in care, and I'm going to be in these conditions where I'm just getting overwhelmed the entire time by my hypersensitivities, and by not being believed, and by not being able to explain myself. And it has been a lot better since I had the diagnosis. I have to sort of say, I can walk into a hospital now and say, by the way, I'm autistic. And they turn around and say, oh, would you like the lights down? Would you like this? I can find you some earplugs. I can, you know, and they really are, you know, it's beginning to be better, but it's not there. Oh, the other thing I wanted to comment on, I really, where's she gone? Oh, there she is, Amanda. I know what you mean about preferring autistic spectrum condition to autistic spectrum disorder. I just used ASD in the end in the paper because that is the one that is commonly used. It's the one that's been,
I know, I understand.
The autism.
However, I feel as though the disorder comes from society.
Yeah, but it's the one that they're using for the autism strategy and stuff like that.
I understand.
Sorry, I'm rambling again.
No, that's all right. No, absolutely. Does anyone else have any questions, comments, anything they would like to ask Alison or Amanda?
Can I tell you some of the real positives?
Yeah.
So, like I say, I decided I was going to set up a WI, and that was because I could see that lots of people on social media were kind of having a social life and I didn't. And then I heard on the radio about this new one that had opened down south. And I think it was Chris Evans was saying how all these women were lining up and they were going to belly dance, and they were going to fix a car, and there were lots of different things that they were going to do. And I thought, oh, I fancy a bit of that. However, I didn't think my local WI would do those kind of things. And also, I wouldn't be able to go to that WI because I don't know what the rules are. And also, I don't know whether I'm welcome, because I know society do a lot of fluffy talk, which means that they say, oh, hi, lovely to meet you. And then you can hear them in the background going, who's she? Blah, blah, blah. And there's lots of underlying currents, and I'd rather say it as it is. So I thought, well, do you know what? I'm going to set one up myself. Because, and it does sound quite controlling, but it meant that I knew that I'd be welcome there, no matter when I go, because it wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for me. Now, it does sound quite controlling. However, I am good at gathering people together and starting something. I'm not very good at maintaining it. So what I did, I got it going, and I was president for about 3 years. I probably broke all the WI rules. However, it's still going now, and I have a lady, it went on to another lady for about 3 years, and now it was 2014 actually that I set it up, and it's still going strong now. However, it has gone to a lady that is you know, very well up on the rules, so it's probably, but we were new wave, and now we're more traditional, let's say, but it's still going. So I feel as though my what's the word, impulsiveness kind of gets things done. Yeah. So I did that. And then we did Wigs and Wellies. I don't know whether if any of you, I'm sure you have heard of Tea and Tents. And me and my friend, I went to most of those Tea and Tents. I think there was 1 year I didn't go. And the last one, they said they weren't doing it. So I turned to my friend and said, we can do this. And we did. I don't know whether you've heard of Wigs and Wellies. So it started off with just over 100, but the thing is, we wanted to keep things small. We felt as though Tea and Tents had just got like beyond huge, and I understand it's popular, but we are quite what's the word, so not selective, that's not the, no, but we wanted to keep it small because we wanted, we're both neurodiverse, and we preferred it that way. Anyway, it has managed to go up to about 180 this year, but this year is our last year, but there's lots of things that you know, we kind of, my friend will say to me, want to join the gym, and then next thing she says, where have you gone? And this is on Messenger. Where have you gone? And I've joined, and send the screenshot, and she says, oh my God, I'm going to have to join too now. So there's lots of things that do get done, do you know what I mean? And there's lots of positivities. I'm passionate about things. I dressed up during the lockdown, and, you know, and I did that for me. I didn't do it for other people. I did it for me, and I did it for me to get out of bed each day, because I need motivation and a purpose in life. So yeah, so I tended to, and this day, 2 years ago, I picked my son up dressed as Donald Trump, and my son was, I'd picked him up as all different characters, and this time he told me, what did he say? We're finishing at 9 o'clock, and he'd actually finished at 8:30. So when I went there, he was there all on his own, because he didn't want anyone to see me dressed up. But these are the good things about being neurodiverse. We are encompassing. I handed my notice in, and you know who came to see me this morning? I had to go at 7:30 to drop me laptop off, because I didn't want to see my manager, because she just triggered me. And while I was there, the cleaner came and said that she was going to miss me. How nice is that? Do you know what I mean? And she says, I'm so happy, you know, I'm so thankful that you're in this world, because every time I used to go in, I'd be all singing, dancing, I'd say hello, and I got a load of hand creams at Christmas, and I don't even use hand cream, so I gave it all out, and I gave the cleaners some, and I gave the caretaker a head torch. The only thing is, it didn't have batteries, so I told him, you're going to have to get batteries for that. I said, no, it's fine. But I do feel as though I'm encompassing of everyone. I'm non-judgmental. My best friend as a kid was Catholic. I was Protestant. I don't see all this hatred in the world. Do you know what I mean? And this is a good quality of being neurodiverse, because we don't go with social constraints. Does that make sense? We just love people.
Well, in small doses.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I do need a lot of fun for myself as well. It's true. Anyhow, yeah. Right, enough of it. Anybody else got any questions?
I know I haven't piped up at all, but I have been sitting listening very intently, and I don't really have any questions, but I'd just like to say it was really lovely of you both to share your stories. It really was. They're very personal to you, and it's nice that you felt safe and able to share them with us. And thank you. I just want to say thank you for that.
Oh,
thank you, Karen.
The kind of you.
Yeah. And also that RSD, you know, the rejection, we do battle that. I agree with Alison. We battle that on a daily basis. We think everyone hates us, and we don't do that for attention, but that is because we've been kind of told to kind of dismiss our feelings, our gut feelings and such like. So we question everything. But to hear that, Karen, is heartwarming. Thank you.
Good. No, you're welcome.
Thank you. Anyway, if you want us to do talks, we'll do talks in your WIs, separate WIs. I can't, honestly, I just talk and talk forever. Me, love it. Swing my leg down here as well. I'm actually stimming. There's lots and lots I could tell you. Yeah.
Anybody have any final comments? No? Okay. When Amanda was talking about Donald Trump, she reminded me of the one picture that I saw where she dressed up as like the clown from it. That did really scare me and my kids when I show them the photo.
So sorry.
I think it popped up and I was like, oh, okay. It reminded me of the day.
Did you defriend me then?
No. I just thought rather you than me. I didn't think I could do that one. So.
Oh.
Okay, well, in which case then, if there's nothing else, I'd like to thank Amanda and Alison for spending their time with us this evening. And as Karen said, yeah, thank you so much for sharing your stories and the facts and the figures, and hopefully that helps people with the resolution. I would like to hope that this one goes through. I haven't heard many things against it, so yeah.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, you can, Alison, yes.
Yeah, if anybody goes on about the cost, the money is already there. It has been agreed. It has been ring fenced. It is not taking money from anything else at the moment. But only the first tranche of money has been passed over. So we have this very thin window of opportunity to get in there before the second tranche is passed over and say, oi, can we actually review sort of some of the criteria that you're using for this second tranche of money. But the money is that it's not money that we are taking from any other service. I think that's important, because that is the objection that people are putting up, and it's like, you know, can you refute it if anybody comes out with that? Thank you.
Thanks. That's really good to hear, actually, Alison, because I have heard that one. I completely forgot about it until you said it. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay, well, in which case, thank you so much then. Thank you. Yeah, again, Amanda and Alison, really, really appreciate it. And thank you everybody else for joining us as well.
Thank you. Have a lovely
Thank
evening.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.